so much energy and skills and so much dedication has been given to this experience, and everybody comes away smiling.
Like, I have the best friends as a result of GFN, you know. I have a community that kind of shares the same values as I do. You can't have a city that doesn't put people at the heart of its economic future.
Hello and welcome to our third episode of Soup in the Loop. This time around, I had the great pleasure of chatting to Holly and Una, the driving force behind Chester's Good for Nothing chapter. Good for Nothing is a gathering of volunteers who apply their skills, passion and energy over a condensed 48-hour period known as the Hack. This melting pot of talent never fails to deliver meaningful support to their chosen organisations in and around Chester. Good for Nothing is carefully crafted and steered by Holly and Una, and to me, it's a fascinating social powerhouse. So I wanted to see what makes Good for Nothing tick, but also how Holly and Una stay so focused and motivated. GFN movement is something that really demonstrates the positive change that can be made when people come together in Chester, and it needs to be celebrated. So let's find out more about asks, hacks, and how you can get involved in GFN to help continue their incredible work.
Did you just hurt your hands?
Yeah, basically. Okay, let's go for it. Okay, welcome to the pod, everyone. It's so good to have you here. I know we've been speaking about it for a little while. You know, it's a big thing for us to explore conversations with business leaders and all sorts of people, but it's really great to have you here that are doing something amazing for the community. So I'm sure the audience can have a great listen. So we want to explore all things about Good for Nothing today. So, but before we do that, what I'd like to do is just to get a sense of who you are as people and why the magic works in terms of how you make Good for Nothing work. So let's start. Una, can you just tell us about Holly, please?
Okay, so it depends on, am I telling her like a dating profile or, you know, like her business profile? Or
Combine, please.
Okay.
Be kind, please.
Well, she's a bit of a force for good, isn't she? Is our Holly. How would I describe Holly? A pocket rocket who does good for nothing. But I think it's really important to remember this is all a side gig. You know, it's like this is a voluntary role that Holly has done. You'll know Alice, who started it to begin with, and then Holly came on board quite quickly. And they've been like, you know, she's transformed it. You know, I know her in the early days of it, but not the beginning, definitely. And I think that drive, that force for positivity and change and is really at the core of who she is as a person. And I think she's pretty special. She's also a marketing crackerjack who is freaking good at her job, you know, and I think that's really important to remember is that, you know, this isn't being led by people who are amateurs. This is serious professional who is at the top of her game. Who's using her skill set to do good for nothing.
There you go. How do you follow that?
Do you want to write my dating profile?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Oh, God.
So there's a lot in there we want to sort of break down in terms of like it being a force for nature and the energy to continue to deliver it. Because you've been doing, how long have you been doing Good for Nothing now? It's been a long time.
So, yeah, it was towards the end of 2013 that Alice Rose Elliott started GFN Chester.
Yep.
And I joined her a few months after that. And it's been going it'll be 10 years next year, won't it? So,
oh my God.
Yeah, we're going to have to plan a party.
We're going to have a big party. I should also add, if I am doing a dating segment, you know, like she's very outdoorsy. It likes climbing mountains. And at one stage, volunteered with Loch Lomond Rescue.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Very good.
Thank you,
No
Una.
end to her talents.
So let's return the favour then. So let's paint a picture of Una for us.
I mean, I'm not going to be quite as eloquent, but you know, Una talks about me having and Alice at the beginning, you know, transforming GFN, but actually having Una on board has been an absolute godsend. So you came on board, how long ago was it?
Oh gosh. Well, I joined GFN 2015 and then like was very involved at that point.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I can't even remember.
No,
but
a good
a while.
7 years perhaps. So Una, I mean, there's so many hats, I can't even count them that she wears. There are so many hats. But her energy and drive for everything she does is always at the forefront. And anybody that knows her feels the energy radiating from her pores. She worked for University of Chester, Deputy Director of Partnerships, and also an educator with specialisms in, let me get this right, theatre and conservation. Very interesting combination there. You can elaborate if you want at some point, Una. But yeah, Una does all sorts of other things in and around Chester, for various communities. Christmas dinners, Lemsisse project.
So, it's a good ground for us to start from in terms of how do you make it work. So let's go into Good for Nothing. I quite often talk about it to people I meet as well. I'm hands up, I've not been for a long time, but I was, part of it kind of, from the start in terms of did go to some hacks, so I know it quite well. But I always find it quite hard to really encapsulate it, very simply. So how do you do it? So when you meet someone on the street, I'm part of Good for Nothing, what's that?
Right. Well, I think I'd say that we are a collective of creative volunteers who accelerate positive change in Chester. That's in summary what we do. We could go on, Una. Go on.
So we get asked that question all the time, and I think it's really problematic for some people because people are given their time for free.
Yep.
And historically, lots of people go, yeah, but what are they getting out of it? I used the example with my mum, which was, imagine the Women's Institute, but if the Women's Institute took place in a pub, allowed men and booze, and instead of talking about doing good, you did good. And that's really, at its core, is about people using their expertise and talents to accelerate positive change. And that's been really special.
Definitely. And I think the other unique part of it is that we will only apply our skills for ventures and organisations that couldn't otherwise afford us.
Yep.
So that's where we have really made a dramatic
Yep.
impact on various projects that
Yep.
we've supported.
So let's just wind back a little bit, because I know that, you're probably used to telling us what the elevator pitch is, but when you say it, it's like, well, actually, what is it? Let's break it down really into like the fundamentals of what the organisation is. You've got a mission, clearly, but how do you go about that, doing that month to month, year on year? What is it physically and theoretically?
Well, we break them down into, there's kind of two parts to what we do. I'll go through the first part, which is the quickest bit, which is socials. So we all get together and we make connections and we meet like-minded people. And from that, friendships and relationships blossom and we all help each other. The second part, which is the primary purpose of GFN, is that we hold hacks, which are events that can be for 4 hours on a weekday evening through to 24 hours over a weekend, where we hack a problem and we hack and ask. So at the beginning of the hack, we'll have a question that by the end we hope to have answered.
And it's worth that word hack. I find that quite problematic because I don't come from that world in any way, shape or form. But it took a little bit for it to be explained to me, because at first I was like, oh, it's like hacking a problem. You're unpicking it. It comes from that gaming, computing culture, and that's fun. I remember the first hack I ever went to, and it was like, stop talking. I remember being like, what? And it was like, start doing. So if you want to come and have a chat, we're not the organisation for you. Mm-hmm. If you want to come and hack and help and produce assets for, an ask, then that's who we're looking for, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Because there's obviously a really tight community, which is great. And then there's a fantastic branding, fantastic mission behind the whole thing. But there's a certain language that is very familiar to you guys. Let's just break it down. What defines a hack for you guys?
Well, it's a workshop, I think. It's a workshop over a certain amount of time, which has different elements to it. So we all get together at the beginning and then we might post-it note ideas and brainstorm, and then we'll go off into breakout groups and work on various threads. And then
so who's we?
So what we'll do, a really good example is to tell you about our most recent hack.
Yes.
Okay, so we were approached earlier this year by Chester City Baths, and who, if you don't know, are a bit of a Chester icon, an untapped gem in the city centre, who are really struggling. and it's run by a committed collective of volunteers just like GFN, and they were really struggling. So Holly and I went and met the team, and they didn't really understand. They'd been told by various people in the city, reach out to GFN, reach out to GFN. Yep. And they were like, who is this GFN? They didn't even know what GFN stood for. So they reached out to us and we met them. And kind of what we're doing when we meet them is asking questions, and that's something Holly's really good at, is like sitting people down and getting to the nuts and bolts of what their issues are.
That's right, and we'll tailor a brief together with the organisation we're helping, like Chester City Bus, and we'll say, right, what is the ask of all these people that are going to come and help you? And then throughout the day, we'll try and answer that through this workshop. And essentially, the ask at the beginning is answered by the end, and as Una said, we'll hand over to them plans, graphics, ideas, spreadsheets, presentations, the lot.
So within that, before you even get to that day, what we're then doing is once, like, and this is something that, you know, it took me a while to get my head around, was about it's taking somebody's, we're in crisis mode, we need help, we do this, and then kind of trying to pull the threads of what can we reasonably do, what are the skill set with our team, and GFN will put out a call out to our GFNers, which is what we refer to them as, and say we're looking for different people with different skill set. So
there might be digital skills, graphic design, PR, events. We try and include as many skill sets as possible, but it will always be tailored to that venture and what they need from us.
So this hack, we were looking for people who had back-end web development skills. We were looking for people who had funding experience, from marketing and PR backgrounds, business planning.
So So one of the things I was going to say then, obviously from the very start, unless you apply your skills very, very well, and take that panic, we need help, and define it into a very clear, attainable ask, it's going to fail, isn't it? So, it's so important at that moment that you do your job properly and like use your skills and knowledge between you and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And that takes quite a bit of work, actually. We've spent, days and weeks getting to know the venture that we're helping, really, as Una says, pulling at the threads and trying to figure out which parts of this challenge that you have can we really give value to and help you with, and so it then becomes a written brief that we write, which gives our GFNers who want to take part, we send it out a few days before the hack and we say, this is the background, this is about Chester City Bus, these are the challenges, and this is the question, the ask that we're going to ask you to answer by the end of the day.
Hope you don't mind me asking, do you create that brief in line with what your hackers are and abilities, or do you challenge the people in all directions?
Both. I think the thing with the City Baths hack was far-reaching. So we knew that we were going to need new GFNers. So we were going to need to do quite a kind of aggressive social media campaign. Like, do you know somebody who wants to give their time for free? Do you know somebody who has a background in funding? We were really pushing certain skill sets that perhaps we knew traditional GFN members didn't have. And I think we probably wouldn't have got away with doing that a few years ago, but because I think GFN has got quite a lot of credibility, and that they were able to advocate on our behalf, and we used our social media platforms to reach out to different potential hackers.
That's right, and we picked up quite a few new GFNers who came along to the hack and helped.
And I think part of the reason people bought into it was Holly spent a bit of time creating some of the kind of call to action info. I think that's quite important, is people resonating with what's happening. Like, if say we just helped an organisation outside of Chester, it wouldn't be something that would have that kind of pull on heartstrings.
That's it. I was going to say that emotional connection, and Chester City Bus, it's really easy to do that with them because they're so historic. They're a heritage building. It's incredible. So it's just ensuring that our messaging and our call to actions for people to come and help us really resonates with the audiences.
So you must have seen quite a change then from the start to how you work now in terms of how you approach. And
Definitely, yeah. It's evolved a lot, and we've actually kind of picked up and taken it on as our own. There are lots of good for nothings all over the world. It's a global project. But really, we've really picked it up, and the good for nothing founders have let us do this. It's been brilliant, and we've really shaped it into our own. So the socials didn't exist before we came along, and the way that we plan out the hacks, as you say, with these briefs, kind of deviates from their usual process. So it has evolved for the better. We keep evolving. We've talked already about things we might change in the future about how we operate.
I think because everything operates on a very much like hand to mouth basis. Most of the time, nobody gets any, money for doing anything. Most of the time, people are the only benefit is you get some really nice food and you get a couple of beers for your hard work. But in terms of like the longevity of us as an organisation, but also about supporting it in terms of, its sustainability. We're looking at like how can we kind of almost create like a manifesto for GFN Chester to kind of go, well, what are our core principles? Because we talk a lot. Lots of people reach out to GFN and say, come and help. And I would say about 60% of the time we say no.
Right, okay, interesting.
And we say no not because we don't want to help, but because one, capacity, there's two of us who are kind of leading on it, but also because it has to be compelling for people like Stu. You're a busy man. If you're going to come and give up your Friday evening and a Saturday, you want to be doing something that's worthwhile. And if we're supporting an organisation, you're going to be going, well, I want to make sure that they couldn't pay for me to come and do this. And that sounds a bit... That's kind of part of the deal is you feel like you're doing good in you're giving your expertise.
You say before, you need that connection, don't you? The hearts and minds for people to be really involved in it. So you obviously with City Baths, then you got a brief defined. You reach out, but you need to find a location to do it. Or did you do it at the
usually
baths?
we would, but we did it at the baths because they
yep.
had some great spaces we could use. They've got conference rooms upstairs. They've got a great bar that we spent a lot of time in. And
they've got a swimming pool.
And they've got two swimming pools. So they gave us their space, which was brilliant. But usually we will have to kind of beg, borrow and steal and then go out cap in hand to ask for venues. And there have been some amazing supporters of us that have given space for free. Andrew Davey at Industry is one that comes to mind straight away for hacks.
Yeah, the Common Hall, a lot of the
social. Popcorn.
Common Hall were phenomenal in terms of like, particularly pre-COVID, like they not only gave us a space, they gave us food and discount on beers for people for socials. I think that's the thing that I think is particularly special about GFN is the willingness of the hospitality industry. Like we had sponsorship for the City Baths project from Liquor & Co in Chester. I don't know if you know Mouse, but basically I abused Mouse social media in order to him to do good by giving us some cash. So that meant we could then pay Kate at Peak Sandwiches and she gave us a discount on food and drinks.
It's so much
and Bear Bakery gave us, round the corner, they gave us croissants, so everybody, it's not just the hackers.
You could have brought some croissants with you.
I know, sorry, they're just next door, aren't they? But the generosity and the goodwill has been incredible. And that is, 9 years of working in Chester and building a brand and building that reputation that we've got now is so valuable to us because we don't have any money. So it's
probably been quite hard to build that brand then because you haven't got the ability to sell yourselves. It's just word of mouth.
That's it. It's just gradual word of mouth, and that's really how we get more people involved. It's usually a friend of a friend comes along to a social.
Matthew came to your last. Matthew Denton came to so I spoke because he's one of our clients, HSS.
So good.
I said to you, you should come along.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's exactly
he said that. He has been invaluable to City Baths.
He really has.
Like one of that has been kind of an interesting kind of conversation that we've had about how do we support an organisation from the hack because actually they still don't have the skill set at the end of the hack. So we can hand over a set of assets and go, there you go.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to build it. They don't know how to do that. So one of the things that we've agreed with City Bus is like, and asked hackers, and there's no obligation of a hack for anybody to give any more time. But like Matthew's a great example of like, he grew up using the bus.
Yeah, of course.
He became a lifeguard in the bus, and now he's this amazing web, developer, and understands all sorts of things that I have no clue about, and has been such an asset. And there is no way that they could have afforded to have paid for that service.
For sure.
And so we've done follow-up hacks, mini hacks with them.
Yeah, great. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things I remember from the start. It's like, having an amazing hack, get the ask is answered. Yeah. But then what happens then? What, do you get feedback, and did they go run away and do it or not? Or that's the kind of the missing bit then, isn't it? You wanted to
definitely, yeah. It is about following it up and communicating it, and I think that's something that we can do better. It's just such limited resource between Una and I, as we've got full-time jobs.
Absolutely.
But yes, we always try and communicate what happens after the hack.
Yeah.
And you know what, the Chester City Baths, about 90% of the people in the hack wanted to continue to support and help them in some way. So,
because they probably set up then as an organisation ready to take more support on externally, whereas maybe some wouldn't. Is that fair to say?
I think like I think the Story House one is a good example that we were talking about the other night. Is that what tends, when it's done well, GFN is a catalyst for an organisation, and different, like unlike Chester City Baths, Story House had lots of people. Do you want to?
Yeah, so the Story House hack was called It's Story Time, and their community engagement team reached out to us to say, we're opening this amazing space in Chester. We kind of know what audiences will feel comfortable walking in through the doors and using it, but how do we reach the people that wouldn't feel comfortable coming in? How do we get to them? How do we reach? And so that was what the hack focused on. And it was also about making the space as accessible as possible so that people who were a bit nervous about coming in felt reassured.
Great.
And so we got a really diverse range of people in to do the hack. People with various challenges around their site and kind of like learning challenges. So what came out of that was a set of really stunning pieces of graphics, for which then went on to inform. It went onto all the maps around Story House. It went onto the walls so that people could be guided around the space really visually using icons. And that actually contributed to an award that was won for accessibility at Story House.
Okay, wow.
And Story House then continued with that graphic designer who designed them and paid them to continue to do that work. So. Nice. So though we can't promise that that's going to happen, there's so many different opportunities out of them.
And I think that's a really important point, is for us, people don't get paid for giving their time, but this is almost like, a calling card for individuals. And we say that, like, we should be encouraging organisations in Chester to use local creative individuals and organisations. And for us, that's been really special. We did a foodie hack, which was about reaching out to the independent community, independent businesses across Chester who were really struggling with footfall before COVID happened. And we ran a hack that was all about how do we encourage people to visit the local independent restaurants. And what came out of that was then used by Chester Bid, some members, various other people, all contributed to creating an app that was paid for and commissioned. Who was the...
It was the council, wasn't it? Paid for that.
Yeah. And so came together and went, okay, this is brilliant. Let's test this. And the Hunger Games app came out. And I think that was really special, because what it was saying was, do you know what? These are great tools. And we do actually say, this isn't about you getting free work for people. If you want to commission people, you've already got this free, consultancy. But you can then take that. And
those opportunities must be arrived from your kind of network in the background and the brand developing. It doesn't organically happen. That you must be really pushing that through, I think.
I think we push for getting the right expertise round the table at Hacks. I think, we had a conversation about we will always endeavour to be inclusive as an organisation, but actually that doesn't mean that GFN is going to say, everybody should come along. Yeah. That's why we target very specific skill sets for our hacks. Come along, do a social, get involved, listen to speakers, be a speaker, contribute, network. But we want people to be taken seriously as the professionals that they are.
I didn't realise there was such kind of orchestration going on. It's almost like
quite a lot.
Yeah. It's like kind of, obviously everyone come in if you do something of a day job, but you have an opportunity to do something slightly different. It's just more of a community thing. But
yeah, absolutely, that's right. Our first prerequisite for anybody that wants to join Good for Nothing Chester is that, and excuse the swear word, that they give a shit about Chester. They need to be passionate about it. They need to care about it. So that's the first one. And then secondly, we do, when they sign up on our Good for Nothing Chester website, they complete a form where they can describe themselves and their skill sets and what they want to bring. And there are some GFN skills they can select as well. So there's doers, makers, creators, thinkers. And when we come to planning our hack, we'll look at what the ask is, and then we'll have a think about the skill sets that we need around the table. So as much as we are inclusive and everyone can come to our socials.
So that's why the socials are really important. So you get to know everyone quite well and kind of start,
Yeah, and I think like the great thing about the socials is you get a sense of, are people going to show up? Because it's all right showing up for a beer and a halloumi, fry on a Thursday evening and having a chat. But actually committing your day and understanding who we are, you have to kind of sit in a room with somebody and, they need to buy into it as much as we need to buy into our belief that they'll show up, because there is a bit of that on a like, particularly with the hack we did for the city baths. We were really worried because it was the first weekend of the summer holidays and we were just like, and we knew that they were on a deadline and we kind of were like, can we push it to September? But if we did, we would have missed out on some certain things. So we pushed for it. But then what was needed was a massive drive on our part of who do we know already? Who's already a GFN stalwart? And then who can we reach out to? And a really great example of that is we managed to get Sarah Helen, who's the creative director at Harden Estate. And I reached out to her and basically said, we need your creative eye. We need your vision. And she had never been to a hack before. She was a bit apprehensive. Okay. She wasn't sure, that whole, am I really going to be an asset? And my goodness, she blew our minds away. She showed up on the Friday. She said, I don't know if I can stay for the whole period. And then was like, absolutely threw herself into it, and not just the ideas but the kind of assets she produced throughout that day. And that's somebody at the top of their game who has massive pressures in their own work but got involved, bought into what the City Bath stands for and what GFM are trying to do. And it's that kind of pulling out those individuals across the city that I think we've worked really hard at. So we'll go to things just to find out, do you have the GFN gene? Are you willing to show up and be counted? And not everybody is, and that's fine. If you don't buy into the concept, because some people are like, no, I can't afford to give you my time for free. And that's absolutely fine. But some people are like, oh yeah, I want to give back.
And the time is right for them as well.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, some people will dip into GFN, like you said that. Like Andrew Davey has been like a massive champion of us over the years. But life happens, and so people, it's not like we are ticking an attendance and going, Stu, you've not been in 6 months, you can no longer attend a social. It's about people giving their time when they have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, because we want people who come to the hacks to be fully focused on it, fully committed and motivated, not thinking about having to get away in, half an hour. We do want to be flexible, though, and it is that passion and that energy that we always see, that always at the end of every hack, our minds are blown because so much energy and skills and so much dedication has been given to this experience, and everybody comes away smiling. And just that rapport that you build by working together with people and really seeing their skills come to the fore is just fantastic. We just love it.
Like the anxiety that we have beforehand is ridiculous.
The night before is the worst.
But we've sold like GFN to people who already think this is a really weird thing. People are collectively going to give up their time to help us. So you're going, yeah, of course they are. And then you're going, how many sign-ups have we got? We're going, oh, we need to do a call out. Or life takes over and people have to pull out because shit happens. And so there is a nervous, sleep. Are people going to do what they've said they'll do?
So I guess it's not a case of like you hope people turn up and that organisations get what they get. You really want to deliver what they need.
Yeah, exactly. And we put a lot into ensuring that the people that have signed up are aware of when it's happening, and we'll do lots of reminders, and there will be a drop off, 10-20% will drop off because life has happened. And we always kind of bear that in mind when we're looking at the numbers we get in. So we usually will add on a 10% margin to it to make sure we've got enough people.
So it's a very well organised
machine, isn't it? It's getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years in the making, we're getting there now.
And I think what we've learned over the last, particularly since COVID, because we've learned a lot about how each other work, which I don't think we had a real understanding of, and understanding that what Holly's skill set is very different to mine, and her knowledge and expertise of GFN is going to outstrip anything that I can say, in terms of, because she's been there since the beginning, but I think there's a real appreciation for each other in terms of what we bring to that conversation.
Totally. We compliment each other a lot, and that's compliment with an E and an I, actually, because that was a great Bumble profile earlier. But we are like chalk and cheese, and it works really well. People don't think that works, but we support each other, and we have dramatically different skill sets, and that really helps when it comes to planning these kind of hacks and events.
And I think we're definitely that's helped us be kinder to each other, like in many ways, because I think when you spend so much time with another person, you get to sense, there's that whole leadership thing, isn't it, about, building a team. And for me, there's no point in building a team that looks and sounds like you. For me, the best thing about Holly is that she brings another dimension to every conversation. She knows the ins and outs. She knows how to, PR and market the heck out of things that I don't even think about. So, she is the go-to, kind of Girl Friday for anything to do with that. And I think for me, like, I'm probably the more pushy person with regards going out and basically nagging people to give us some money.
You're brilliant. You're so connected with everybody too. This is where I completely lack that, is you just know everybody who is anyone in around Chester, and you get stuff done, you make connections. I mean, it's, part of your role is Deputy Director of Partnerships at Chester Uni. So you are at that higher level, and you can converse with people at that higher level, and it really brings something to what we need, and it's what's been missing. So
I will abuse any friendship to get stuff for free for GFN is basically the crux of it.
So do you think there's a kind of a benefit to like the makeup of Chester and the size of it, and the kind of, a lot of people are saying it's small, there's no opportunities, but actually it feels like because of the size of it, everyone is well connected, everyone's passionate about what they do, but there is still challenges to tackle, so which gives us an opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. I think Chester is the optimal size for an organisation like us, who relies on word of mouth, connected partnerships, and from a brand awareness perspective, it's great because it's not a huge city like Manchester where we want to be known, and we've really managed to kind of carve out a space for ourselves in the creative community, and that was the original reason we existed, was because there was that gap in the market for a creative community to come together and make change happen.
And I think this, like, when we've spoken to GFM members, in the past, like, some of them have said they went to traditional networking groups, and they were like, oh, this isn't me. You know, none of us are sat here in suits right now. You know, I have quite a serious job. I've never worn a suit for that job. But, you know, they wanted to find the others. And I think why GFN has thrived in that environment is because people wanted something else. They wanted to find like-minded people who shared the same values. And I think that's the really special thing is when you come to a social, you know, we've got 18-year-olds to 70-year-olds who come to GFN, and they all share the same values of, you know, caring about where you live and wanting to do good in those communities. And that's kind of, for me, why it's thrived in Chester. Like we've reached out, we've been in touch with like GFN New York, and you know, it's huge, and you know, they've had, you know, probably big successes, but in terms of longevity and growing, you know, GFN Chester has grown every year and people have remained loyal to us. And I think that's because there is that kind of core kind of community of people who live in and around the city.
Very good. I was kind of thinking, is there a bias towards the creative industries, creative people still? Or is that something you're trying to address? Because I guess that an ask is usually around delivering, you know, kind of, you know, problems around marketing, what you know, I've said before with the BAF in terms of plan and websites development. Are you looking for people that are more rounded in terms of like finance or to join as well?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely did originally start as kind of creative specific. And so then you've got your foundational skill sets there, marketing and PR and design and photography and film.
All the fluffy stuff.
Don't you say that. The creative focus. But certainly we're more and more aware of the need to branch out and to get a more diverse skill set in, because, you know, funding and finance, business strategy, these are a lot of things that come out when we're sat with a venture taking a brief and working out how can we help you, that comes out. I
think that I'd not thought about that. It took me about 6 months before I joined JFM because I remember thinking and I at that point was lecturing in creative arts, and I didn't think I had the skill set to be a member of this brilliant group. And I remember that hesitancy of going to the first thing, and I just was like, oh, these people are all really cool and creative and I don't have this skill set. And so I'd totally forgotten I'd felt like that. There was massive anxiety for me about going, which is really strange because I don't normally feel like that, but I think the socials help with that.
Yeah,
definitely. And that is a thing. We are aware of that hesitancy around, like, am I the right fit? Have I got any skills that someone's going to want? And I think that's where I came up with you need to give a shit about Chester. That's all you need to do. If you have passion, you will give us the energy and you will have skills. If you know about Chester, you'll have the skills. So that's where that started off. And actually, Chester City Baths hack was a good example of, right, we haven't got these skill sets in our membership. Like, let's reach out and get some in. So, you know, events planning and creative eyes and funding, you know, that was a big part of it. And we really do want some help with that in terms of helping us find funding and applications for it too.
You know, so one of the things that has been like just game changing was meeting some of the individuals who came to that hack. You know, for example, Dee Denton, who has this massive wealth of experience and knowledge about how to access funding. And what that did was open a whole set of doors for the City Baths that they hadn't even thought about. And for me, Holly said something earlier, and it's at the core of what we do, is it's about getting the right people round a table. And that, you know, as you said, you were surprised, you know, that you thought, oh, this just happens. That is the graph behind the scenes of going, you know, it's all right if you're a keyboard warrior and you want to say what you think should happen, but actually what we want you to do is tell us how to do that, how we get from this is what should happen, you know, and what the stage is. And people like Dee Denton who came along, I love how I have to say her full name. I should just
get it right.
You know, what she did was allow people to then go, okay, we've got these, if we do X, Y, and Z, we could access funding from this point of view. You know, for example, she was talking to the Baths about, accessibility funding, and people are like, oh, right, okay, so if you don't know what you don't know, and that's what's really special, is that when you have that light bulb moment where you can see the venture kind of going, wow, you know.
Yeah, and it was really pivotal actually for that hack, because the name of the hack was Fill the Pacific, because their second pool has been out of action and they've need to raise money, a lot of money for new tiles, and it's ready to open again. And actually, so the ask was around how do we fill the Pacific and how do we help support the Chester City Baths in different ways. And actually what came out of that, and out of Dee's understanding of funding and everybody else's contribution, there was a decision made that was like, we can't open it right now. We can't fill it right now.
Okay.
Actually, we're going to do this, this and this. And actually it kind of, during that hack, it was almost like a pivot point for the Baths to go, actually, we're going to have to change direction completely.
And we're going to go away and talk to our board about alternative, options, because what we've got to remember, and we're really mindful of this, you've got a whole load of people walking in and turning around and saying, we think you should do this. And that's why we felt really responsible for saying, okay, we've said this, we're going to help you follow this up. Because they then go back to their board and go, actually, this group of do-gooders have said X, Y, and Z. And then about holding their hands and kind of having that dialogue, with them, as they make those changes.
And they were fantastic. And something we've not mentioned is that at the end of the hack, actually, the representatives from Ventures come in to the room where we've been hacking. And we present back to them the answers to their ask. And actually, Chester City Baths brought a whole entourage, which was amazing, of almost their entire committee and leadership team to listen to us about where we felt they would have the most impact and where they should go and what direction they should move in. And that's a really important part of the process, because they can sit there, they can listen, they can ask questions. And that's where they really get the value. And they really actually, now we understand what you're doing, why you're coming in here. And that's where the value is really delivered.
They're like the nicest people ever. They're like us, but they just the team are
scuba divers,
and they just care so much about this club in the heart of Chester, and they're doing everything they can to make it work. And so it was just so lovely to spend time with them and help them kind of keep something alive in the city.
So it feels like the sort of skill sets around finance and business planning are I won't going to say mission link, but really do help with the long term effect of what you're doing. So what's the plan to try and do more of that, I guess?
So one of the ways that this is very in the early stages, and we've only started talking about it, is about looking at kind of we are a CIC, a community interest. Well, we are moving towards a community interest company model, and the reason for that is about kind of sustainability, but also about being able to access funding. And that would mean that we wouldn't have to go hand to mouth, particularly as we enter a recession. We don't want to be asking every independent business in Chester, repeatedly, because we're really lucky that we've had all this support over the years. But also about allowing us to identify Chester organisations and individuals who would benefit from support that they wouldn't be able to access otherwise.
Okay. What's the moment? So like the board come in from the City Baths and you then present it. What do you get? That moment of all that hard work, and then there must be a moment of like, oh my, pure joy from your aspect. What do you get from it personally?
Oh, that's a big question. Yeah. We were talking about this other night, actually. I think everybody that comes into a room to do a hack is motivated by an understanding that they are going to contribute to Chester getting better in some kind of shape or form, and they are helping accelerate positive change, whatever that may be. But I also think that every single person walking into that room by the end of the hack has such an amazing sense of achievement that you want to do it again and again and again. And that's why we have so many GFNers that come back and come back, because not only do they contribute to Chester and to a worthy project or venture, but they also get that inner warm sense of doing something really good.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us don't get that feeling very often, or certainly in jobs that we're in, we don't. And that was in a previous life, I never got that sense of satisfaction. And that's why I looked to GFN to give back and to get that warm sense of achieving something and doing something good. Una, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I'd also add, like, we were talking about, there is an element of me that says, that people, what do you get out of it? Like, I have the best friends as a result of GFN, I have a community that kind of shares the same values as I do. But also, for me, that idea of people love a moan. And we and I like a moan every now and again. But what's really lovely about GFN is it's making a positive difference. So as Holly says, at the end of that hack, you're kind of going, I've done good today, But we were laughing about is being a member of GFN, an element, is there an element of altruism in it? And I was like, I feel like, because actually what's been really lovely about some of the projects is freelancers have ended up getting work out of it. Yeah. And for me, it becomes kind of like a closed economy. It's about supporting our independent and freelance community in Chester. It's about shedding light on small businesses and organisations who aren't in Liverpool or Manchester, and ensuring work is not diverted to those cities. And for me, that's quite important, is that I want Chester to be recognised as a creative community where you can have a thriving career. I work in education. I see regularly my students at university moving to big cities because they think that's the only place that you can have an interesting, and creative, job. And that's really something we should be proud of, is that something like GFN is contributing to people putting down roots, building those connections. And for me, that's what I get out of it, is about the connections with other people and knowing that you're helping shape the city that you live in.
I can't follow that.
No, it's a very worthy cause, isn't it? It feels like you've built something so big. It's like, do you feel a bit kind of daunted by how you're going to protect it? Or is it you're just so pushing forwards, we're enjoying it? Does it ever come into the foreground?
I think you're very good at remembering purpose.
I think it is always important to come back to purpose, isn't it? And I think there's so many opportunities to go off on tangents with this, and to explore other ideas or do it differently. And actually, I always in the back of my mind is going back to why we exist and what we're here for, and just ensuring that core purpose that we are accelerating projects in Chester is a really important one, because we do get distracted a lot for good and for bad reasons. Yeah. And it's staying on course is the important thing. And we remind each other of it, quite often. We'll have a think about and go, are we wearing too many hats right now? Yes. Yeah. How do we get back to basics? And how do we keep our GFNers engaged? There's COVID, for example, that's 2-3 years without a single hack, in person. We did an online hack, which was brilliant. Walk, Ride, Thrive. It was about getting people using active travel, but it wasn't the same as sitting in a room with pens and paper and Post-it notes and getting creative like that.
But I think that was one of the first times we kind of realised how differently we worked, because we'd gone online at university, and you were like, is this going to work? And I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. And that's my general default. It will be fine. But what was brilliant was we reached out to this absolutely legendary GFNer called Cassia, who's got expertise.
She's a graphic designer and gamification of apps. So.
Yeah. And she introduced us to Miro and
the Miro board. Yeah.
And we started using, different types of technology and bringing people together, and we ran a hack. But to keep people engaged, we reached out to Popcorn in Chester to see if they would make, kind of drop-off packages.
Okay, yep.
So we did this random thing where every GFN, and we had like 18 people sign up. We had 3 GFN members, GFNers, who then did these random drop-offs across the city to people, and in them they got like GFN like bags of goodies that had like beer,
all sorts of things,
chocolates, and it was like you'd get a random knock on your door.
And then, we were all in a Zoom room, and someone would like on their screen look behind them, and their door would open, and Sylvie's there, just got off her bike with a little goodie bag in her hand, and it was just, we've just tried to make it more interactive and engaging, because we did appreciate that people. During COVID, people sit in front of their computers all day, every day, in front of screens on Zooms, and actually we're asking people to be on Zoom for 7 hours on a Saturday. You know, it was a big, big ask.
And it was a really sunny day.
It was a lovely day. We were cursing.
Which was like, because we were thinking if it rains, it'll be great because nobody can go anywhere. But actually, you could have had a lovely Saturday in your garden. Yeah. But the results of that were phenomenal, and the assets that were produced were then used and created to kind of promote this active travel agenda within the city. You know, so I think you're very good at reminding me about purpose. And I think Holly and I talk a lot. The one thing we disagree on is Holly loves a voice note.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I love a voice note, and absolutely hates them and refuses to listen to them.
I don't even listen to them anymore. I can't handle them. So if you're part of the voice note culture, you know, I'm not going to be in your gang.
Pass on the voice notes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you know what I think? People value their time over yours. Holly's not too bad at this.
I'm quick. I get to the point.
But some of our friends will leave 2-minute voice notes, and I'm like, "Are you for real?" I think we talk a lot. You know, during COVID, we bubbled together, which was much,
Okay.
yeah. And when we were allowed to see other people again, we were like, yes, come on. So we would, it was great.
That cemented our relationship, didn't it? Really
did. It was, you know, that kind, and I think that really did actually, being really honest, it was that kind of connection over COVID where we were talking most days and thinking about ways of how we could engage the community, but also do it authentically. We didn't want to just be like, come and join us, you know, for X, Y, and Z. It had to be something good that got our community back together. And I think that's it's the only reason it works. If we weren't great, genuinely, I don't think you could do this if you weren't great friends with the other person, because it would feel like you're doing a job. Yeah. But actually, we hang out, we go for dog walks. You know, I don't even like dogs. And I go on dog walks with her.
Annie's a special one.
Yeah, genuinely, I hate dogs and cats. And, you know.
So she tolerates a lot by just hanging out with me for a start.
Yeah, it's big, my dislike of animals.
But I mean, it's a huge, huge undertaking. It's not going to work unless you've got, you know, a great relationship, isn't it? What is on my mind is that kind of, you obviously have got a great mission and you're very well grounding yourselves and learning and developing it. Do you share that knowledge and expertise with other parts of Chester or organisations at all? Because I'm assuming that the way you approach stuff, your culture and your positivity, there's a lot of people out there could benefit from it outside of kind of thing. Is that something that kind of maybe you'd think about in the future?
So this year we were asked to do a TED talk, and I ended up being the person that did it, but behind the scenes was Holly, and I think that kind of the whole ask of that was very much about, you know, instead of being a keyboard warrior, you know, the next time you think about complaining, you know, go and find the others. That was our big ask of that. So I do think that Holly and I are very much kind of driven by purpose. You know, I don't think I've ever done anything because of, you know, the title or the, you know, the job or the money. It's always been about purpose, and we've spoken a lot about that, about why, you know, Holly's freelance career, you know, the brand she works with, it's, you know, it's not just I'll work for whoever, it's about what they stand for and those shared values. And that's what you get if you're working at the top of your game. You can do that, and I do appreciate that not everybody has that. So I think when we're in Chester mode, I think being an advocate for what GFN stands for is really important to both of us. And we did something last autumn, which was Project a Hero. And so many people did these amazing things during lockdown for everybody, you know, and it came out of, I had to shield during lockdown because I've immunosuppressed. And loads of people were really wonderful to me, like just, you know, mates doing my food shopping and, you know, just being really kind. And so we were speaking about all this kindness that was radiating through Chester. And we came up with this idea of Project a Hero.
Which is to project various heroes that had been nominated as going above and beyond during COVID for their community. And we got so many people that were nominated. It was amazing. It was over 100 people in the end. And we projected them up on the wall, Chester Racecourse, last bonfire night, actually. And it was amazingly successful. And it just really highlighted some individuals that would have gone unsung.
Yep.
And it was really fitting, actually, for GFM, because it was about helping platform people that wouldn't otherwise have been platformed, you know, and it was just showing an appreciation for our community and the people that were helping drive it and connecting people. Really
we should say that we didn't make the film. That is not our skill set. Sam Riley from Canteen Creative did that for us, and it was just really lovely. And it was really lovely because we went down to the race course and there it was, and all these people, you know, were kind of there, and Holly, like, she is the queen of detail, right? And the precision that she went into in order to make sure that we had documented every one of those and announced them. So over a period of like 30 days, Holly was doing Twitter announcements of who had been nominated and who'd been projected onto, you know, this, onto the race course.
It took about 3 months because it was one person a day.
Yeah. You know, so
which was great.
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah. But you know, that's you know, those kind of things are really important to us about celebrating others and celebrating people making a difference, be it in, you know, their community in Blaken or Hull, or, you know, the individual who is, you know, striving to do good. And they might not have anything to do with GFN. We discovered that quite a lot last autumn. We also did, you might have heard of the One City Plan. We were approached by Chester Council if we would review their One City Plan. And basically, we said yes. That's the short answer.
Yep.
It's the 15-year plan for how Chester was going to develop, and it was created in 2012. So last year was basically halfway point, wasn't it? And that's when they said, we just want to make sure it's still on track. It's still, you know, meeting the criteria, that all the actions are still relevant and important to the people of Chester. And as Una said, we said yes.
Reluctantly at first, I gather, yeah.
Yeah, we very much.
Is this a distraction, I guess, from the cause? But,
no, more about was this our role to evaluate the strategic plan for the future of the city of Chester? And, you know, it was in the second lockdown that this was all, you know, November 2020. And we went back and forth, but we realised that we could collaborate with other GFNers. We could pay some freelancers to do work for us. And we could shed light on individuals who would otherwise go unheard. So eventually our kind of moral kind of brain took over, and we went, we feel like we should do this.
We better have. We'll probably be quite good at it, so let's do it for the greater good. And it worked out. And the other thing that I think worked out really well, because we were commissioned by the council and the Chester Growth Partnership, and they wanted us on board because they appreciated the richness and depth and diversity of the networks we were connected with, and they knew if we were to consult with the community, we'd get some really diverse and interesting and important answers. And actually we managed to achieve that, and that's something that we've been really proud of.
So you got a great response, didn't you, from the surveys?
Like, I suppose this is where, like, I think it's probably one of the proudest professional moments I have, even though, you know, it's not to do with my day job. And we've both talked about that. You know, there was an original scope, as Holly has spoken about. And then because we are adopted Cestrians, you know, neither of us are from here. You know, Holly's Welsh, I'm Irish, but we are definitely lovers of Chester. We kind of felt, well, we're all in right now. So if they'd hired an agency from Manchester, they would have gone, here's the job, this is what we're doing, and end off. But what we did was end up going, every conversation ended with, who else should we hear from? Who else needs a platform? You know, and that came about from Holly and I talking, like, if we're going to do this, then we need to find out who are the seldom heard, who are those communities whose voices aren't represented. Because if everyone looks like you, sounds like you, then you're not going to make a difference.
And the big challenge was that as we were planning how we were going to do that, lockdown came in, and which meant that we couldn't deploy all of the different ways we wanted to communicate with people face to face, because you get so much more out of a one-to-one direct conversation sat across the table from you, Stuart, than you do on a Zoom call. And so we worked really hard to work around that. And we took a long time over it. I mean, in a good way. We were really careful and we were really diligent, I think. And we managed to we had 5 different approaches. So we had an online survey, we had an organisational response form, we had Ludicology who came in to do work with young people and families and how they navigate the city. We had Zoom workshops, we had Zoom one-to-ones, like we had a huge array of different communication channels, just in the knowledge that, you know, it was really going to be hard to get people around the table.
For me, that was the really special point, was when we got Ludicology involved. So Ludicology are a Chester and North Wales based play consultancy, and they do phenomenal things. And we'd reached out to them to initially explore the concept of how young people and families move and spend time in the city, and they were going to create these kind of points where people could stop and interact. But actually COVID happened and we couldn't have people hanging out in the town centre, because the idea was it would start in 2021. So the way in which they pivoted their work was phenomenal. So they created these maps with children, young people and families, which showed their journey from home into town during the lockdown. And these beautiful maps were created that told the stories of how those young people and their families were spending time in the city and what they valued.
They were amazing, weren't they? Because I'm pretty sure they developed an app which used GPS to track their journey. And as the children moved around the city, they took photos, which then were linked to the point at which they took that photo on the map. And then they came up with these amazing visuals, didn't they? Yeah. We showcased the outcomes a few months later, and they were absolutely stunning and really interesting.
It was so special seeing the chief exec of the council reading these maps.
Yeah, I was going to say, but they blew their mind. The response to that.
Yeah, and that was just this phenomenal thing that for us, that was what we brought, was those different ideas, and that, well, how do we engage people who wouldn't really want to engage? We even did like a young people workshop where we went and actively did a call out, like, if you're between 3 and 18, please, we want to do a workshop with you. And just giving those young people that platform, not for us to speak on their behalf, but for them to be heard on the same level as the chief exec of the Countess of Chester, was phenomenal. And for there to be an acknowledgement that we weren't representing the young people's views in this city. And if we wanted young people to stay in the city, we needed to start thinking about their needs and their wants and desires.
Wow. So what was the big takeaway then from that big challenge that, you say you hesitantly went into? Looking back,
set a deadline and don't move it.
And when you say that that's what you'll do, that's all you do.
Don't allow for scope creep. Yeah.
Don't suddenly go, okay,
we'll do this and this and this and this.
A really good example of that is like, so originally we'd kind of planned that this would go from, this date. COVID threw that out the window. So we then were like, okay, how do we do these workshops online? So we designed a workshop and we designed an organisational response. Everything upped its ante at every point. but we had, you know, because Holly said earlier, we have this ask, which is, and our ask at the end of every conversation was, who else should we talk to? That was both brilliant, but also an absolute bloody nightmare because at the
never-ending loop.
yeah. But like, for example, one of our conversations and one-to-ones was with Susan Gilby,
the CEO of the Countess of Chester.
You know, she gave, like, if anybody deserves a third attempt at trying to meet somebody, she did, you know, and she was so generous with her time. But the insight she offered as one of the biggest employers in Chester, and about her vision, her kind of philosophy of how she wants the organisation to be run, was just so insightful. Like, for us, we've said this a lot. You know, one of the things she said is about prioritising, you know, suppliers who live locally, you know, about using that inclusive economy kind of strategy, but also about looking at, you know, young people. And one of the things she said to us was, if we just thought about children and we thought about their needs, this would prevent a lot of the later life care that I'm having to address right now. And it's that kind of conversation that is just, wow, actually, you can't have a city that doesn't put people at the heart of its economic future. Because it's not okay. The 21st century has kind of told us, you know, if you want economic success, you need to put the people and the planet first. And I think that came through every conversation we had about this desire for us to do more and do better. And sustainability, do you want to talk about?
I mean, yeah, sustainability was a huge theme that came out of the consultation and wasn't something that had kind of been thought of or flagged in the past, really. It touched upon the original One City plan originally touched on environmental sustainability, but economic sustainability, social sustainability wasn't in there. And the rallying cry from almost everybody we talked to was around prioritising, looking after people and the planet and sustainability. And in fact, the way that the council actually have picked up this feedback and the way that they've outlined the various actions that need to happen, every single action has an associated set of sustainability goals. The hope and the vision for the new One City plan or the refresh plan is that every single action that is driven forwards is driven by sustainability and has to achieve those SDGs that are against them.
So your impact on that must have been pretty significant.
Well, I think the thing that we're really kind of hesitant about is we you know, it's controversial, right? You know, they had this economic plan which touched on health and well-being, that talked about the environment. But the recommendations from the people who we consulted with, which was extensive, was very much about, you know, a plan that was underpinned by sustainability, a plan that put people and addressed the inequalities in our city. And I think there is a misconception about Chester, which is that it's this quite affluent place. And when we were talking and feeding back, we were talking about the inequalities and access to opportunity. And some people, even in the council and, you know, positions of responsibility, weren't really clear on that. So we are both really proud, but I think we're also very much, this is hard. What they are setting out to do, because we should point out, they've decided to rewrite their entire framework. And it's no longer a 15-year plan. It's a plan to get us to net zero by 2045. And, you know, it's dead easy to say things. And again, if they'd hired an outside agency, they'd have gone, here you go. You know, Holly and I are, you know, going to be there challenging and saying, what are you doing? Because we also said, everybody reported that they wanted a plan, but they also wanted accountability. So I think from our point of view, we feel enormously responsible for the fact that people gave so generously of their time and expertise to contribute to this. We will hold the council to account over that and say, where are you up to? For us, one of the most special things was Kate Rayworth, who's an economist, wrote a book called Donut Economics. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend reading it. It says that we need a new model for the 21st century. Cornwall have used this to create the decision wheel that is underpinned by the Sustainable Development Goals. And Chester is using an adapted version that was designed by one of our GFNers to be at the core of their plan. Now, they've done all this hard work. The big thing is, how do you put this into action? And that, we don't have the answer to that. There are people who are at the forefront of this agenda, but they have done so much to kind of give this over to a community group, give this over to the people of Chester. They now have a responsibility to kind of follow this through.
How do you stop something that's so significant that you've been working on not just completely bleach into the future of GFN? Because, you're going to see it separately, or you're going to see that your future hacks and stuff are always going to kind of be bleeding into that role of keeping accountability, or is it very separate?
Very separate.
Yeah, we've kept it completely separate for those reasons, in that GFN's core purpose is accelerating projects in Chester that couldn't otherwise afford us.
But when you're picking people to work with
Yeah, the ventures is interesting. So we have done a couple of things for the council in the last kind of few years, and we work closely with them because we need to. I think everybody understands that you have to work with your council, not against it. That aside, we're really proud of the diverse amount of projects and ventures that we've helped. And going back to Chester City Baths was a move for us to really get back to what we do best as a collective.
And I think, there are small organisations that have been helped by GFN, like Mini Makery, that Holly's worked quite closely with, about helping people have a startup idea. It doesn't need to be this big high profile, project like Chester City Baths. It can be something that is, two individuals who have this great concept, who want to do good. And Mini Makery wanted to get kids
to enjoy nutritious food. So Ellie and Kate that run the Mini Makery, you probably know them, are just these fantastic women who decided to kind of put their careers aside and focus on helping kids eat healthily through playing with food and having fun with food and drawing on their kind of creativity, making art out of food, making potions, and they came to us, and we supported them. We went to Watercup Cafe and had a really good hack for them there. The other group that came to mind was Ludicology, that we've mentioned, of play consultancy. They came to us. They were one of the first hacks that we did on our.
That hack,
Were you there? Yeah. The sunny day hack, and we helped two different groups then because it was a full day. So we helped Bridge Community Farms, which is still going and doing really well, which is brilliant, and Ludicology. And these are kind of our catalyst projects, really, where we set the wheels in motion and support and give them a kind of catapult towards where they want to get to.
So I remember that catapult, and I was like, what now? How do I follow? It's like, I want to know it's doing good. Obviously, I know Mike and obviously
you know them now, yeah. But they came to us right at the beginning when they were, teaching and had this vision of what Ludicology could be. And we supported them throughout the day with kind of like marketing, a marketing plan, and one of us gave them social media training. And, we really proud that we kind of helped set them on their way, and now they're this amazing organisations that working with the likes of Chester Zoo and Story House and big groups like that to do their thing and achieve what they set out to do.
I think that brings us back round quite nicely to what are the future hacks then? So what's the next ask? Do you know
we
yet?
Don't know. We don't genuinely. We don't know. And that's quite exciting, because otherwise there is an element of me that goes, this is not my job. So there's a loose structure, and it's about I very responsive to that. I think it's...
So the structure's the socials, but necessarily the hacks come when they're ready and when they're right.
That's right. Yeah. It's quite organic in that way. So for the last 9 years, we've done 28 socials, and 18 hacks, so about 2 a year. And they can be kind of sometimes very close together or very spread apart, depending on who comes to us. We've got a kind of a waiting list, as it were, of different people that have approached us over the last year or two.
Yep.
And because it takes so much energy, the planning of a hack, we have to focus everything on that. And I think we're still like at the tail end of supporting Chester City Baths. We've still got good work to do with them now. We've got maybe another mini hack. We've got to make sure that they're, standing on their feet and feeling really comfortable with where they're going. And then we'll look at the list and we'll have a think about the next.
It's the responsible thing to do, isn't it? Not rush it. You've got to be right.
That's it. It's got to be right. To be a legacy and for it to be sustainable. And those are kind of key criteria for who we help.
And I think there's a thing about, if we did one of these every 2 months, people would be like, oh, this is a business, that's not what this is about. So the idea of doing 2, hacks a year feels manageable for people, but also it feels manageable for us. And you said something earlier, which was about, well, where did that project end up? The thing that we're really mindful about now is about being really clear with ventures. Like, you have to have the capacity to either financially support this going forward or access funding to be able to take this forward. There's no point in you, Stu, given your expertise, or you recommending us to your, people within your community, if it can't be taken forward, because otherwise it feels a bit like a waste. And occasionally that has happened in the past, not because they haven't valued it, but because they haven't been equipped with the kind of skill set or the time, because generally people are really pressurized, and so they've not been able to dedicate the time that's needed to move things forward. And that's something we're really aware of, is making sure that, we are valuing GFNers' time and that they're doing something valuable.
Good. So from this conversation and for you, what's the message to people that, oh, this sounds pretty epic? Where do people follow what you do? You mentioned Twitter. How do they find you? What's the next steps for trying to get involved in GFN?
Yeah, I think, firstly, thank you very much for listening, and we'd love to hear from you. I would ask the listeners of this to take on board what we've said and really have a think about how they might be able to help us and Chester, whether that is as an individual, if they want to come along to a social and say hi and see what we're all about, if they are an owner of a venue that they'd like us to have a hack in or social, if they are an expert in funding, if they can contribute in any way, please just reach out to us. And they can do that by searching Good for Nothing Chester, and they will find us on lots of different platforms. And we welcome anybody to reach out to us and come and get involved. Yeah,
you've got to give a shit and get in touch.
You've got to give a shit about Chester.
And don't be afraid,
From your experience, you said you
were... I'm very aware of something. We're not wallflowers, right, Holly and I, and I'm definitely the louder of the two of us, but I think, be brave. We are the most welcoming. We are the most inclusive in terms of chat. So don't feel like if you don't know somebody, come to a social, come and get involved, because we'll hold your hand and we'll give you a beer, non-alcoholic if necessary, and I think that just be brave and believe in yourself, because as I said earlier, I've had the best fun. Doing hacks. I've had the best crack. And
come and do something. So come and take action. Don't be a keyboard warrior. Don't have a moan and don't do anything about it. Come and have a voice and make good change happen.
Yeah. And something special might happen. Let the magic come to you.
Very good. Well, I must say, I think Chester's extremely lucky to have you both as part of the community and leading some amazing things that are going on. So thank you for being here, and I wish you all the best. And I'm sure we'll be involved.
Thank you so much for having us in this amazing studio space. Like, we've just come in and just been wowed by this space, haven't we?
You make really good coffee.
Good coffee. I've got a bourbon biscuit here.
I'm loving the fact that has sat there the whole way.
I've just been conscious not to eat it.
Yeah. Can't have it just yet.
But thank you. Yes, Stuart.
Thanks for having us.
I've got one last question. Mm-hmm. Who should we hear from next? You said the word, I don't want to steal the phrase from you, but What do you think?
I feel like,
Let's do one each.
okay. Do you want to go first?
Well, I'm gonna say you should speak to Dom Ferris, who runs Trash Free Trails, because we were just talking about him.
I love that. She's
I nicked it.
Yeah.
Because he's doing amazing work.
You've literally
cleaning up.
stolen the thing we just spoke about. Holly Fee Nelson.
I'm a thief.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm gonna go for. I think there are some amazing people doing stuff with homelessness in Chester. I think there's a collective of organisations working to address that. So I would get some of those people in, because if we don't tackle homelessness in this city, then, there's something wrong with us.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
I hope you're enjoying the conversations we're having on these podcasts. Don't forget you can join in the conversation on the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Please check out the channel for more, and I hope to see you soon.